everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bullish or Bearish. I'm Angela Chu from Success Options Group, and I'm here again with my brother Tony. And today we have another great topic to give you kind of like both sides of the story on and let you really understand the topic and kind of make up your own mind on what you think about it.
Yeah, like Andrew said, my name's Tony, and right now, and everybody hears this. It's all about inflation, right? But one of the buzzwords that's really come up that I've heard about recently and that we've heard about is this idea of price controls. And the idea of, for those that don't understand it, is basically when you set either a minimum or you set a maximum on like how much you can charge for something. And I mean, that just sounds great. That's like a great idea. Like, you think about gasoline and how expensive is that. If they say they capped how much how much they could charge for gasoline, I think everybody would love it.
Okay, you talk about that. But the problem is that with price controls, that means the government has to step in and set these numbers, like set how much you're charging, for the maximum amount or for the minimum amount. And that means the government has to actually spend, manpower, money, like actually setting it and enforcing it, like it's no use if it doesn't actually get enforced.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in prior videos. It's like the government just spending money anyways. What does this this is something that consumers like us would feel, right? You would feel that reduction in price at the pump. And the idea of price controls is not that new, right? So like there's the idea of minimum wage, right? Who disagrees with minimum wage? Right. And then there's the idea of like rent control, right? Where you can't, charge more than a certain amount of rent in certain areas, right? These are ideas that are in practice that we currently see. And for everybody that has those kind of things seems to enjoy that.
Okay. So you talk about that, but you also don't talk about all the problems that come across with having things like rent control or like having things like, minimum wage. Like, yes, it's a great idea in a sense, but it also has knock-on effects, right? Because like if you have rent control, like then landlords will not want to like purchase buildings in those areas. So then that makes it harder for people who want to live there to actually find vacancy. You know what I mean? There are like knock-on effects for all of these kind of price control ideas that while it does make, in a sense, it easier for consumers. Oh, I like this because I pay less for it. But the fact is that by making it so that you can pay less for it, the supply for it also becomes less because less people want to offer it at that price. You know what I mean? Because in order for things to be in balance, you have to find a price that works for both sides. If it's too cheap for one side, then nobody on the other side wants to be selling it at that price, or nobody's going to be offering it. So then you end up with a shortage.
Yeah, I mean, that is a possible shortage in quality or possible downtimes. But I mean, you just think about like, let's talk about sports. One of my favorite ones. One of the ways they do is they create this thing called a salary cap. So like in American football, like certain teams, this is the most amount of money that you can spend for your players, right? And it's a salary cap. It's price control. And what happens then is it allows teams to be competitive, right? So now you got 30 teams that can possibly win the NFL, the American football championship every year, right? So it's a great idea. It causes it creates a competitive landscape where anybody can take advantage or they can win, right?
Okay, so you're talking about specific instances, like football teams and for specific items or for specific instances, it might actually work all right, as long as you think about all the, surrounding effects. But as an overall like implementation, like generally, you also have to worry about things like a black market, because remember, they also try to implement price control, and that kind of thing on like alcohol in the past, food in the past, agriculture. Like there's a lot of instances in the past where they've attempted to do price control either by setting a minimum or setting a maximum, which actually has not worked out. There is a lot of like history, like where they tried to like set a minimum price for like agriculture so that the farmers could make more money, but then they ended up with a whole big surplus because nobody wanted to buy it at that price. And then the government had to spend the money to buy the surplus. You know what I mean? So there have been instances like that, or where like in alcohol, like you weren't supposed, like prohibition, like you weren't allowed to sell it at all. And that kind of thing ends up turning into like you get illegal markets, black markets, where they sell for the same thing that is being price controlled for an insanely expensive price because they can get away with it and they can make a lot of money off of it.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the debate we're having here. Is like you're talking about, the quality. From my point of view, it's like I want to save money, right? I want to spend less money, and this idea of price control just sounds like the obvious solution because right now I feel like sometimes I get gouged, right? Like that, like why does this gas keep going up every week or every day at times, right? And that's really what at times people feel like the government should be stepping in so that we don't get gouged on bread or milk or gasoline, right? Kind of thing.
So I understand where you're coming from, and from a consumer point of view, because I'm a consumer too, I understand where it's coming from. The only issue is that these price controls, one, they need the government to actually like enforce it, and they need to be funded to control it. Not only that, is that because they're controlling it, the actual allocation for materials sometimes become very inefficient, like both in consumption and in like producing materials, because like people are affected, so they don't want to produce or they don't want to consume. Either way, it throws things off the normal balance in a sense. And then you have to also remember that just because the government is setting the prices doesn't mean that the government is the only one who's trying to, get something in on it, because those prices have to be determined by like a governing body. And what do you think lobbyists and political parties do? They start lobbying for what kind of price controls they want. So even if you say that there's a price control, it's still affected by other people lobbying for what they want.
Yep, great point. So like you as the viewer, which side of this argument do you come upon, right? Are you more for the free market side, or are you more for like price control kind of idea kind of side? Make sure you hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave some comments on which direction would you want, or which direction are you thinking? And make sure you stay tuned and join us for the next episode. See you next time.